It's the show the establishment warned you about.
That's right. It's the Dr. Tommy Show. We're back here in Tampa, Florida, where the Tampa Bay Lightning are facing an uphill battle to try to tie. Actually, not try to tie, to try to get within two of the Avalanche, who just beat them last night. They're down 1-3, and they have a big game coming up Friday in Colorado, and if they don't win that game, then they're out of the series. Thank you for joining us at the Dr. Tommy Show on online as drtommy.com/podcast. Next week, I will not be doing a live podcast because we'll be out of town, so I'm going to replay the podcast I did back in 2016 with Dr. Walter Williams, the late Dr. Walter Williams. There's been some new developments just this afternoon, before we got on the air. The Supreme Court has ruled on the New York City's concealed carry requirements, and this is from Breitbart. It says, Supreme Court strikes down New York's proper clause requirement for concealed carry. It says, this case challenges New York's requirement applicants demonstrate, quote, proper cause to carry a firearm. And it says that the New York regularly uses this requirement to deny applicants the right to carry a firearm outside their home. So basically, the New York law was if you wanted to carry a firearm, you had to show why you needed to carry a firearm. And this was a lawsuit that was brought by the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruntz. It's centered on denials for permits under New York's concealed carry permitting law. And they filed suit. And this is a win for gun rights owners, or gun owners and gun rights, because it removes this obstacle to protecting yourself, which the government always is trying to put up obstacles to you exhibiting individual freedom, whether that be buying insurance, whether that be not getting a vaccine, whether that be carrying a gun. And this is a good sign that it was a 6-3 decision. And so the Supreme Court swing vote of John Roberts apparently swung this way to the conservatives this time. John Roberts is basically a moderate who swings either way. And so this time he swung, thankfully, towards the concealed carry permit. Although it really wasn't important that he swung this way, because it was going to be 5-4 the other way. Some people say if it's a 6-3 decision, it's better than a 5-4 decision. I don't know if that's the case. I think it depends on who's the lawsuit about and who's talking. Because if I remember correctly, Roe v. Wade was a 5-4 decision, and that was held as sacrosanct as much as the 11th Amendment, as the 11th Commandment. It could have been as sacrosanct as if there were an 11th commandment. It was the right to abortion, which is apparently under potential repeal now that the Supreme Court draft memo was released from earlier this year. Leaked. They're trying to find out who did that. I guarantee you, if that was a liberal opinion that was leaked and it was deemed to be potentially offensive to liberals, that person would have been found out that day, and they would be currently serving prison time right now. But because it was ostensibly designed to hurt the conservatives by leaking the Roe v. Wade decision early, it's swept under the rug. They're supposed to be doing some type of investigation now, but who knows what'll ever happen with that. Either way, it didn't turn out to hurt their side. That means the conservative side, because I think the more people talk about it, just like the more people talk about anything that has to do with limiting the power of the government or limiting the ability for citizens to defend themselves, or whatever the case is, liberty in general, the more that people talk about it and understand, the more people will understand and favor the side of liberty. Not all the time. There's some people who are going to be anti-freedom no matter what. And this ruling here about the concealed carry permits would definitely draw the ire of some people who don't think that you should have the right. They are anti-freedom. They are anti-liberty. They don't say that. They may not even realize it or know it, but they are. The people that would not allow you to have your own gun to protect yourself are anti-freedom and anti-liberty. The reason that they don't want you to have your own gun is because they know themselves they are not smart enough to deal with it. and they may end up shooting themselves or shooting other people, or they think that they know and they know better than you, and they're better than you, and then you shouldn't have it. Either way, they're anti-freedom and anti-liberty. And so that's a great thing that we've had this lawsuit fall on the side of the conservative or liberty-oriented calls and for liberty-oriented people. For anybody who's trying to get their Liz Cheney fix, I have a bad news for you. The Liz Cheney show trials are not going to be shown until after the July 4th break. It says here that this is from Red State. January 6 hearings are in limbo again for a laughable reason. They told us, they said that they're going to delay the hearings. It says Benny Thompson tells us after, this is from Twitter, I guess, Politico. Benny Thompson tells us after Thursday, the select committee will resume hearings in July. The panel is reassessing its schedule after significant new tranches of information have arrived, including documentary footage, NARA productions, and new tips. So they're going to delay it because they got to go through all this good information. And so if you're out there at home and you're trying to get your Liz Cheney fix, you're going to have to wait or watch reruns. What else? So that's the January 6th kangaroo court is no longer in session until July. The Andrew Gillum is the guy who ran for governor down here in Florida. Ron DeSantis beat him, but did not beat him by a wide margin, only won by 32,000 votes. I say only because I think they say there's 23 million people here in Florida. But either way, down here in the Free State, this Andrew Gillum was running. He was this Tallahassee mayor, and he was groomed to be the next big star in the Democrat Party. And now he has been indicted. This is from American Greatness. It says, Florida Democrat Andrew Gillum charged with campaign fraud, false statements. Former Democrat gubernatorial candidate was indicted on Wednesday for campaign contribution frauds charges stemming from his 2018 run for governor. So this guy was running for governor and got this fraud, apparently, indictment for things that he did between 2016 and 2019. It says a federal grand jury returned a 21-count indictment alleging that between 2016 and 19, Gillum, 42, and co-defendant Sharon Janet Letman Hicks conspired to commit wire fraud by illegally soliciting and obtaining funds from various entities and individuals through false and fraudulent promises and representations that the funds would be used for a legitimate purpose. It says that they were disguised as payroll payments and sent to Gillum for his personal use. And Gillum denies that he denies he's guilty. He says, I've spent the last 20 years of my life in public service and continue to fight for the people. There's been a target on my back ever since I was mayor of Tallahassee. And this is not legal. It's political, blah, blah, blah. Gillum's attorneys are Mark Elias and David Oscar Marcus. This Mark Elias guy is the guy that was a Fusion GPS attorney. I believe he was a Fusion GPS attorney. Anyway, he's connected with almost every big Democrat operation in the recent history, and he was connected with Hillary Clinton, and he's been connected with all kinds. Like I said, he's been anytime there's some big kind of big Democrat election thing going on, Mark Elias is there. He was with Perkins Coie, and then they, I guess he's no longer with them. He's all on his own now. I think they were scared that there was going to be some stuff come down from him, for him from the Durham investigation, but who knows if that'll ever happen. We have a new information or new news here that says that Publix is not going to give the COVID vaccine for kids under 5. Offers no explanation. This is from the Daily Wire. Florida-based grocery chain Publix drew a hard line Tuesday on COVID vaccines for children under the age of 5, saying that their pharmacies would not administer the shots to children under 5 despite the recent emergency use authorizations. This took some guts, because I tell you, this is not the mainstream of political establishment to do this. I think they got a little bit of courage to do this, not saying that this is the only reason, but I'm sure that the fact that Ron DeSantis has taken a stand against administering the COVID shot or recommending the COVID shot, let's put it this way. if you're in Florida and you want your child at 6 months old to 5 years to get the COVID shot, you are perfectly able to get it. You will be able to get it from your pediatrician, just like always. It's just that the Florida government, the Department of Health, is not recommending it. They are not forbidding you from getting it. They are not putting you in jail if you give it to your child. They are just not recommending it. And for that, they've been labeled as anti-child and trying to stand in the way of kids just being able to live freely, because once they get their vaccination, according to the experts, then of course they will not get COVID. Oh, well, I don't think they say that. They say we'll protect them using this very broad generalization that they will protect them. But as we learned from the hearings with Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci, the only evidence that they used to approve this, not the only evidence, the compelling evidence they used to show that this was beneficial for children under age 5, from 6 months to 5 years old, was that they developed antibodies. And so because they had developed an antibody response, therefore this vaccine was deemed to be appropriate for those children. And Ron DeSantis is the one to say, I don't think so. And now Publix says, look, we're not going to do it either. And I don't blame them, because this is an experimental vaccine. Despite the fact that it has a FDA approval, it was approved under emergency use authorization. If they really wanted people to have confidence in the shot, I think they would approve it under a non-emergency use authorization. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. COVID started widespread in the United States in March of 2020. It is now June of 2022. Why are they still approving vaccines under emergency use authorizations? When is the emergency going to end? Is this going to be like the Afghanistan war, where we went in to get rid of bin Laden, and 20 years later we were still there? Is it going to be that as long as COVID walks the face of the earth, then we're going to be under an emergency use authorization, and we're going to allow these these medical we call them vaccines, medical treatments, to be pushed on the market under emergency use authorization? I think people would feel more confident and more willing to give them the shots or get the shot if it wasn't produced on emergency use. Because what's the emergency? They say, well, children are still getting COVID and things like that. Okay. Kids are still getting COVID, right? And kids that get vaccinated presumably will still get COVID too. So what's the rush to give them an emergency use authorization COVID vaccine at this point in time? And beyond that, we're still inoculating people with a spike protein mRNA from the original COVID virus. Have you ever got a flu shot and they said, hey, we got the flu shot. This is the one from 3 years ago. Do you want it? You would say no, because obviously you know that the flu vaccine is not the same year after year after year after year. So why would the COVID vaccine be different? So that's just something we're going to have to learn to deal with, is that emergency use authorization is something that they're going to use as a tool to rush these things to market. And it said that the company did not plan to offer any explanation. That's good for them. They don't need to offer an explanation. It speaks for itself. They don't want to give it, and that's it. If you want to get it, I'm sure Walgreens and CVS will have it. This is something that's a little scary. This is from this is from American Greatness. Deborah Hine. American Board of Internal Medicine threatens to revoke medical licenses from COVID docs Peter McCullough and Pierre Corey. The American Board of Internal Medicine is threatening to revoke the medical license of two leaders in the alternative medicine response to the COVID pandemic, Doctors Peter McCullough and Pierre Corey, for allegedly, quote, providing false and inaccurate information to patients. So Peter McCullough is an internist, cardiologist, epidemiologist. So he's been one of the ones to speak out against the COVID vaccine and a lot of the COVID establishment protocols that have been put in place. But mostly he's been the one to sound the alert on the problems with the COVID vaccine, in particular, COVID-related heart conditions like myocarditis and pericarditis. So apparently the American Board of Internal Medicine has now sent him a letter, and they have advised him that basically he's run afoul of their of what they think should be done, and he is going to potentially be punished for doing this. It says, CEO and president of the American Board of Internal Medicine, Dr. Richard Barron, wrote to both doctors to let them know that the board would be meeting to, quote, determine whether to recommend any disciplinary sanction, in quotes, against them regarding their views on the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic. So what are these guys advocating? Well, some of the things they're advocating are treatments that aren't considered what the medical establishment would consider a correct treatment. So a lot of it has got to do with ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, all the usual things that you're aware of. And like I said, in speaking out against COVID-19 vaccines, in the guise of saying what could potentially happen with the COVID-19 vaccines, and because of this, they are now being kind of bullied into silence, it seems like. And this is what McCullough told it's a podcast, I think, Highwire host Del Bigtree. McCullough told Highwire host Del Bigtree last week that he was, quote, shocked to receive a letter from the ABIM after being board certified by the organization since 1991 as both an internist and later as a cardiologist. He goes, I've poured thousands of dollars in that organization in countless years of my life. I'm widely published person. I'm the most widely published person on heart-kidney interactions to the whole world. In the last 2 years of COVID-19, I have provided scholarship. I have 56 peer-reviewed papers in the literature, brought the world early treatment protocols. I've been a careful analytic physician and a careful commenter on vaccine safety and efficacy. It says McCullough said he responded to the ABIM with a letter that's nearly 24 pages long. So this is a problem, is when you are in the medical establishment and you're starting to speak out against the things that the medical establishment says you should not speak out against, then you can be punished professionally for doing that. And he would like to have an open forum about this and have a debate. And that's what you really need, whether it's a debate upon COVID-19 protocols, whether it's a debate on climate change, whether it's a debate on abortion, whether it's a debate on gun rights or gun control. That's what we need, is more debate. But every time from the left, you'll see that they don't want debate. They want to have shutdown of debate. They want to have silence. They want to have you not do whatever it is that they don't approve of, and just shut up and fall in the line and do what they want you to do. So these guys, Peter McCullough and Pierre Corey, are being disciplined. And I have here a few different things on ivermectin. These are both from PubMed. So here's one. It's a role of ivermectin in the prevention of SARS-CoV-2 infection among healthcare workers in India, a matched case control study. And I'm just going to read the end of it. It says here, conclusion. This is about prophylaxis, of using ivermectin for prophylaxis. It says, conclusion. 2-dose ivermectin prophylaxis at a dose of 300 micrograms with a gap of 72 hours was associated with a 73% reduction of SARS-CoV-2 infection among healthcare workers for the following month. So this was about chemoprophylaxis in India, and it said that they gave these people prophylaxis with a dose of ivermectin, 2 doses, but 72 hours apart, and for the whole month, the following month, it had a 73% reduction in SARS-CoV-2 infection. Okay, so that's one story on ivermectin. Here's another story on ivermectin. It's from PubMed. Evaluation of ivermectin as a potential treatment for mild to moderate COVID-19, a double-blind randomized placebo-controlled trial in eastern India. Conclusions. Inclusion of ivermectin in treatment regimen of mild to moderate COVID-19 patients could not be said with certainty based on our study results, as it had only shown marginal benefits and successful discharge from the hospital and no other observed benefits. So they're saying that they should not include it. They had no overwhelming evidence to say that you should include ivermectin because it only had a marginal benefit and successful discharge from the hospital and no other observed benefits. So in my mind, that's not even a tie. That's probably leaning more towards ivermectin. But anyway, let's call that a tie in saying that ivermectin is not very useful. So there we go. We have 2 studies, both from India, that say ivermectin is either good or not good, or marginal benefit at best. Why is it that Peter McCullough should be censored for his belief in using ivermectin or any other alternatives when it's clear when you review things that there are different outcomes that people get from using ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. And if you silence somebody like Pierre Corey or Peter McCullough and don't allow them to talk about it, then you're going to lose out potentially on some of the health benefits that come from alternative treatments or alternative points of view. There's a time when it was thought that the COVID-19 vaccine would prevent COVID-19 infection because it was called a vaccine, and because Joe Biden said so, and because Dr. Fauci said so, and because everyone was forced, not everyone, but a lot of people were forced to get the vaccine under the premise that if you got the vaccine, then you would not get COVID and you would not spread it to others, and we would get the COVID zero. Dr. Rochelle Walensky from the CDC is another one. So all these things were at one time established, like they like to say, settled science. This is settled science, like climate change is settled science. So at one time it was settled science that the vaccine would prevent COVID transmission, prevent COVID infection. And if just enough people got the vaccine, if we could just force enough people to get the vaccine, this emergency use vaccine, then the COVID situation would end and we'd all be back to our happy lives. And here we are 2 years later facing economic downturns because of the COVID lockdowns, because of the government action, and spiraling out of control economy with people losing their jobs, all because the government response to the COVID infection was completely, if not completely, almost completely incorrect on how they responded to it, from the lockdowns to the forced vaccination to the elimination of any other alternatives or attempted elimination of alternatives, like they are trying to do to Peter McCullough to shut him up so that he doesn't speak about things that are different than what the establishment belief system is based on what they believe you should do with COVID. And that's what it is today. So you're a physician out there now. Today it's COVID protocols, and whether or not whether or not you're the one to champion Paxlovid, which is the brand new drug that actually it's a repackaged drug from before, but they're using it again now. They're using it for COVID, and it's been shown that if you give someone Paxlovid, they may get over COVID, or they may get over COVID and come right back, and then that's called a rebound infection from COVID, similar to like if you had what you never hear now, they call breakthrough COVID. You never hear that word anymore. If you Google the breakthrough COVID right now, breakthrough COVID infection, here's what you'll get. On Google, you'll get some articles from 2021, probably the latest would be December, but mostly from 2021 that'll say breakthrough COVID is a very, very, very rare event that can happen when you get a COVID vaccine. And if you search on YouTube, you may find a video of Joe Biden spitting and stammering and saying that, look, if you just get it, it's a 1 in 5,000 chance. You're not going to get COVID. You may find something like that from Joe Biden. But either way, breakthrough COVID was a fallacy. Breakthrough COVID is not a thing. It is not a 1 in 5,000 chance of you getting COVID if you've had the vaccine. It's absolutely untrue. Anybody knows that now. But again, this was at one time settled science. This was what was considered the protocol. And this is the kind of thing that if it were to rewind now, if Peter McCullough was talking about that, the ABIM may be coming after him for that. And then what's next on the horizon? Well, new thing is transgender surgeries, transgender treatments, hormone blockers, puberty blockers, things like that. What if you're a physician now and you start saying, well, I don't think we should be giving puberty blockers to children. I don't think we should be giving, we should be asking children, are you a boy or a girl? And then based on what they say at 5 years old, starting them on some type of irreversible treatment that may harm them very much mentally and physically for the rest of their lives based on what they said at 5 years old. Or even older, younger or older. It doesn't matter. The point is that what is established now in the medical establishment as being the correct thing, if you go outside of that, the chances of you being harmed, either professionally or otherwise, you have your reputation harmed, are great. And the only way that we're going to see a reversal of that is for common, ordinary people to stand up and see it for what it is, and see it for the bullying that it is, and see it for what it is as far as limiting the fund of knowledge of people out there to understand and be able to to acquire knowledge and then decide for themselves what they think is right. But if you're going to bully doctors into doing only certain things, then you're missing out. I have a personal story of when. I have personal evidence and also anecdotal evidence from my own clinic that if you go, most people, not everybody, but if you go on a high fat, high protein diet, then your cholesterol levels and your triglyceride levels will improve, meaning your HDL will go up, your LDL, bad cholesterol, will go down, and your triglycerides will go down if you eat a diet that is heavy in animal fat and protein. Now, that is considered blasphemy in the cardiology circles or the medical establishment circles. If I tried to publish a paper like that while I was in residency, I would not be allowed to. Or if I tried to give a presentation on that, I probably would not be allowed to. But that's exactly what happened for me. And that's what exactly happened with other people in our practice. Like I said, it may not happen with everybody, but it does happen for some people. But the idea that you have to have acceptance only of what the medical establishment says is what is limiting your ability to learn about different things and also to be able to potentially be exposed to the quote unquote truth. Because the truth about dietary stuff is, as everybody has seen over the years, it's lived long enough. How many times have you seen that eggs are bad for you or good for you? It goes back and forth. Same with, all the different things about bran, taking bran for colon cancer. There's a lot of different things that have come and gone through the years. And right now it may be one thing, but in a few years it may be another thing. But if you're going to limit what can be said, that's the reason for free speech. And that's the reason for freedom in general, is the freedom to understand things, and the freedom to absorb things and decide for yourself. Just like you have the freedom to defend yourself if you want to with a firearm. If you want to go outside New York and walk around with a firearm because you feel comfortable with it and you feel safe, then you should be allowed to do that. As long as your freedoms extend from, freedom is basically, like Walter Williams said, rights are very easy to understand. Rights are someone that everyone has simultaneously, and you're born with them. So the things that you have the right to you have the right to speech. You have the right to bear arms. You have the right to congregate and associate with people that you like. And your rights do not impinge on other people's rights. So that's when some people say, well, I have the right to health care, or I have the right to an abortion. Well, if you have the right to health care, then your rights mean that if you can't provide yourself with health care, then you're going to get it from somebody else, and they're going to have to pay for it. And if you say, I have the right to an abortion because it's my body, what about the fetus or the human embryo that's in your body? What is their rights? It goes back to the whole thing about abortion too, is there's a fundamental argument that you have to make about abortion, and is that when is it okay or not to kill a human? When is it okay or not to kill a human? Is it okay to kill a human based on age, viability, or is it okay or not to kill a human based on what they've done? And in some cases, it's okay to kill a human. It's okay to, for instance, on death row, to put someone to death because they have committed crimes that have been judged to have risen to the level of capital punishment. So when you're talking about abortion, for one of the things, they have to say, well, I have the right to abortion. Well, is it your right to abortion? When is it your right to end a life? And as we've seen in California, now they think there's some people that should have the right to end a life of a person based on their age or viability all the way past infancy. I mean, all the way into infancy. So there's, laws that they're trying to pass on the books out in California, I believe they actually did, that make infanticide to a certain age not a crime. So those are the kinds of things you deal with. But you got to remember that rights are something that exists among everyone simultaneously, and your rights cannot impose on others. And that's how you know if it's a right or not. Otherwise, it's either something that's really good to have, like health care for all is not a right, but it would be really good to have, or food. Food is something that people say, well, foods are right, housings are right. Those are things that would be really nice to have. But what is a right is your right to be free, basically. Your right as an individual of liberty, not to be molested, not to be harassed, not to have your properties taken from you, not to have yourself harmed, because you yourself are your own property, as Walter Williams says. And that's how you know that if something, it belongs to you, is if you have the right to sell it. That's another thing. And so if we were to stop and think about things like that on a little bit more concrete basis, we'd have a wider understanding of what is and is not allowed by the government and what should be the proper role of government. And the proper role of government is not to tell people that they can't speak on certain things medically unless they are completely fallacious and provable. That would be provable if Peter McCullough was saying things that were so fallacious and dangerous that they were causing problems. It has not been proved that. Or if you're the government, you should not be able to tell people that they can't defend themselves because you're like Michael Moore and you're scared that you'll shoot your own self because you're not that good with a gun. That's your own problem, and you cannot impose your weakness on other people, your limitations on other people, and pretend that you're doing society a good. Anyway, it was good to talk to you guys. We'll see you next time. In the meantime, you'll see Dr. Walter Williams next week or hear him on the podcast Rewind. And have a good weekend. Until next time. Bye-bye.